The future of Asia may belong to India. Imagine this. You are attending the most important economic summit in the world. The year is 2035. The chair at the head of the table belongs to India. Not America, not China, not Japan, India. The Indian representative is not there to ask for aid, not there to request membership, not there to seek approval from older powers. India is there because no serious conversation about the future of Asia, the future of trade, the future of technology, or the future of humanity can happen without India in the room and leading the room. This is not a fantasy. This is the direction every major data point, every economic projection, and every geopolitical trend is pointing toward right now. Asia is the most important continent on Earth. It holds 60% of the world's population. It generates over 35% of global GDP. It contains the world's fastest growing economies, its most dynamic technology sectors, and its most contested strategic waters. And at the center of Asia's future, one nation is rising with a speed, a scale, and a certainty that is beginning to make even the most skeptical analysts sit up and take notice. That nation is India. Not because India has been handed anything, not because the circumstances are perfect, but because of what India has built, what India is building right now, and what India is positioned to become in the decades ahead. This is the story of why the future of Asia may belong to India, and why the world needs to understand this before it is too late to fully appreciate what is happening. The first reason is the most obvious and the most powerful. India is about to have the largest workforce in human history. By 2030, India will have over 1 billion people of working age. 1 billion. That number is almost impossible to hold in your mind at once, but try to understand what it means economically. Every factory that needs workers, India has them. Every technology company that needs engineers, India is producing them. Every hospital, every school, every infrastructure project across Asia that needs skilled human beings, India can supply them. China, which powered Asia's economic rise for 30 years on the strength of its massive workforce, is now aging rapidly. Its working-age population is shrinking. Japan's population is declining. South Korea's birth rate is among the lowest ever recorded for any nation in history. Southeast Asian nations are growing, but none at the scale India represents. At the precise moment Asia's other giants are running out of working-age people, India is producing them in numbers the world has never seen. Demographics are not destiny, but when your demographic advantage is this large and this sustained, it becomes the closest thing to destiny that economics knows. The second reason is India's technology transformation. India is not just a country that uses technology. India is becoming a country that defines it. The Unified Payments Interface, known as UPI, processes over 10 billion transactions every single month. It is the most advanced real-time digital payment system operating at scale anywhere on Earth. More transactions flow through UPI in a single day than through Visa and MasterCard combined in many comparable periods. Countries across Asia, Africa, and the Middle East are not looking to Silicon Valley for payment infrastructure anymore. They are calling India. Singapore has linked its payment system directly to UPI. The United Arab Emirates has done the same. France became the first European nation to connect to India's payment network. This is not a small technical detail. This is India exporting the architecture of modern financial life to the rest of the world. Beyond payments, India's technology sector is producing some of the most consequential innovations in artificial intelligence, space technology, biotechnology, and clean energy. Indian startups raised over $25 billion in a single recent year. Indian engineers are leading research teams at the most advanced technology companies on the planet. And increasingly, those engineers are choosing to build in India rather than migrate to build elsewhere. The brain drain that cost India so much for so long is reversing, and what is flowing back into India is experience, capital, ambition, and a determination to make India the technology capital of Asia. The third reason is India's unique geopolitical position. Asia is not a peaceful continent. It is a continent of deep rivalries, contested borders, historical wounds, and competing visions of regional order. China and Japan have unresolved historical tensions. China and Southeast Asia are in active dispute over the South China Sea. The Korean Peninsula remains technically at war. Central Asia is a complex web of Russian influence and Chinese investment. The Middle East, on Asia's western edge, is in perpetual flux. In this complicated, contested, dangerous neighborhood, India occupies a position that no other Asian nation can replicate. India is large enough to be taken seriously by every major power. India is democratic enough to be trusted by the Western world. India is non-aligned enough to maintain relationships with Russia, the Middle East, Africa, and the global South simultaneously. India is militarily capable enough to deter aggression without threatening its neighbors with expansionist ambitions. No other country in Asia combines all four of these qualities at once. China is large but not trusted by the West. Japan is trusted by the West but not large enough to anchor the region alone. Southeast Asian nations are growing but lack India's strategic weight. India sits at the center of a uniquely valuable position. Every major power in the world needs India's friendship, and every major power in the world knows it cannot afford India's opposition. That kind of geopolitical centrality is extraordinarily rare in history, and India is learning, with growing confidence, exactly how to use it. The fourth reason is India's infrastructure revolution and its regional reach. India is not just building for itself. India is building connections that are redefining Asia's economic geography. The International North-South Transport Corridor connects India through Iran to Russia and Central Asia. It cuts shipping times between India and Russia from 40 days to approximately 20. India is investing in port development in Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and across the Indian Ocean Rim. India is building digital infrastructure connectivity with neighbors across South and Southeast Asia. The India-Middle East-Europe Economic Corridor, announced in 2023, is perhaps the most ambitious trade route project since the ancient Silk Road. It connects India by rail and sea to the Gulf, to Israel, and onward to Europe. It bypasses traditional choke points. It creates a new economic spine for Asia and beyond. And it was proposed by India, not by America as charity, not by China as leverage, by India as partnership. The distinction matters enormously. When China builds infrastructure through its Belt and Road Initiative, recipient countries often find themselves in debt with limited local employment and facing strategic strings attached. When India builds connectivity, it brings a different philosophy, one rooted in mutual benefit, respect for sovereignty, and the shared experience of a nation that knows what it means to need infrastructure and not have it. That philosophical difference is giving India a credibility in Asia and the global South that money alone cannot purchase. The fifth reason is India's energy transition and what it means for Asian leadership. Asia is the world's largest consumer of energy. It is also the continent most vulnerable to the consequences of climate change. Rising seas threaten coastal nations from Bangladesh to Vietnam. Extreme heat events are becoming more frequent and more severe across the subcontinent. Water scarcity is an existential concern from Central Asia to South India. India understands these stakes more personally and more urgently than almost any other nation. And India has responded with an energy transition program of staggering ambition. India has committed to 500 gigawatts of renewable energy capacity by 2030. It is already the world's fourth largest producer of renewable energy. It launched the International Solar Alliance, a coalition of over 100 nations working to accelerate solar deployment globally, and India created it. India leads it, and India hosts its headquarters. As Asia grapples with its energy future, India is not waiting for Western nations to provide the roadmap. India is writing the roadmap itself, and the nations that follow that roadmap will find themselves in an increasingly close orbit around New Delhi. The sixth reason is India's cultural and civilizational reach across Asia. This is the dimension of India's Asian leadership that statistics struggle to capture. Indian civilization is ancient, continuous, and vast. Its influence stretches across Southeast Asia in ways that predate colonial history by thousands of years. The temples of Angkor Wat in Cambodia are built on Hindu cosmology. The royal traditions of Thailand carry Sanskrit names in Indian ceremonial roots. Across Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines, the traces of Indian cultural influence are woven into language, art, religion, and philosophy. India is not a foreign power trying to project influence into Asia. In many ways, India is the civilizational source from which significant parts of Asian culture originally flowed. And in a region that values historical relationships and civilizational continuity, that heritage is a form of soft power that no amount of Chinese investment or American military presence can replicate. Add to this the Indian diaspora, tens of millions of people of Indian origin living across Southeast Asia, East Africa, the Gulf, and beyond, and you have a network of cultural, economic, and personal connections that extends India's reach across the entire Asian world. The seventh and most important reason is India's democratic model and what it offers Asia. Asia is a continent where democracy is under pressure. In multiple countries, authoritarian governments have consolidated power by promising efficiency, stability, and growth. The argument made by these governments, sometimes explicitly, sometimes quietly, is that democracy is too slow, too messy, too inefficient for the urgent work of development. And for a period, that argument seemed credible. China's authoritarian model produced 30 years of extraordinary growth. Singapore's tightly managed democracy delivered world-class outcomes. The message heard across Asia was that freedom might be a luxury that developing nations could not afford. India has spent 75 years proving that argument wrong. India is the world's largest democracy. It holds elections of extraordinary complexity, covering nearly 1 billion voters across a country of staggering linguistic, religious, and ethnic diversity. It transfers power peacefully between governments with opposing ideologies. It maintains an independent judiciary, a free press, and constitutional protections even in conditions of immense social and economic pressure. And it has done all of this while simultaneously becoming one of the fastest-growing major economies in human history. India is the living, functioning, breathing proof that democracy and development are not in conflict, that freedom and growth can happen together, that a nation does not have to choose between liberty and prosperity. In a continent increasingly tempted by authoritarian shortcuts, India's example is more than inspiring. It is strategically essential, because the nations of Asia that want to build prosperous, stable, respected futures need a model that does not require them to surrender their citizens' freedoms to achieve it. India is that model. And as India's economic power grows, as its technology expands, as its infrastructure connects more of Asia to its prosperity, the appeal of the Indian model will grow with it. Not through force, not through propaganda, through results. Now step back and hold all of this together at once. The largest workforce in human history coming online in the next decade, a technology sector that is already exporting digital infrastructure to the world, a geopolitical position of unique centrality that every major power needs to cultivate. Infrastructure investments that are connecting Asia on India's terms. An energy transition that India is leading rather than following.
a civilizational heritage that runs deeper across Asia than any modern power can manufacture, and a democratic model that offers Asia a path forward that authoritarianism cannot. Is India without problems? No. Inequality remains vast. Air quality in cities is a crisis. Religious tensions require constant attention. Bureaucratic inefficiency still slows things that should move faster. India's leaders and India's people know these challenges intimately. But here is the truth that the critics who focus only on India's problems consistently miss. Every nation that has ever led its era did so with enormous internal contradictions and unresolved problems. America led the 20th century while practicing racial apartheid for much of it. Britain built the Industrial Revolution on brutal colonial extraction. China achieved its growth miracle while keeping hundreds of millions in poverty for decades before lifting them out. Leadership does not require perfection. It requires momentum, vision, capacity, and will. India has all four. The momentum of an economy growing faster than any comparable nation, the vision of leaders and citizens who have stopped apologizing for ambition, the capacity of a billion-person workforce, a world-class technology sector, and nuclear-capable military strength, and the will of a civilization that has survived invasion, colonization, partition, and poverty, and is still standing, still building, still dreaming, still moving forward. Asia's future is not written yet. The continent is too large, too complex, and too dynamic for any single outcome to be guaranteed. But the direction of every major trend is pointing toward the same place, toward a continent where India is not a rising power, where India is the central power, where the decisions made in New Delhi shape markets from Dubai to Tokyo, where Indian technology runs the financial systems of nations across 3 continents, where Indian diplomacy holds together alliances that keep Asia stable, where Indian culture, Indian values, and Indian civilization once again occupy the place they held for thousands of years before the colonial interruption. The future of Asia may belong to India. And the extraordinary thing is this: India is no longer asking whether it deserves that future. India is simply building it. One factory, one rocket, one road, one payment, one election, one dream at a time. The question is no longer whether India will lead Asia. The question is whether the rest of the world will be ready when it does.